Without any further ado, without any opening remarks, if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to take them. Mr. President, good afternoon. Anastasia Savani, TASS Agency. You've spent 3 days here in Dushanbe, and more than half of this time it was your official visit to Tajikistan. You spent many hours talking with your counterpart, Mamali Rahman, both in person and in a wider format with your delegations, which means there is a lot of interest. The size of your delegation is an evidence to that. So what are the areas that are being developed and what are the prospects in these relations? And a follow-up question about this, we signed a labor migration development program with Tajikistan. Internal Affairs ministries opened their offices both in Russia and in Tajikistan. Do you think it helps smooth out the migration flows? Will it help minimize the illegal migration, reduce illegal migration and crime? And are we planning to have similar programs with other regions? I will start with the bilateral relations. Tajikistan is an important partner for us overall and in Central Asia, and its importance is that it's a border state of the CIS, and despite the fact that we don't have a common border, it's very important both for the security of the Russian Federation and because we have our border officers serving there. And we maintain close contact with our colleagues, and we have our military base. So that's one. And of course, we spend a lot of time discussing these matters, and we can see that the current authorities in Afghanistan are trying everything, doing everything to normalize the situation in the country, but nevertheless, there are a lot of problems there still. And Afghan authorities, they recognize it, they acknowledge it. So at this border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan, we need everything to be very secure. And secondly, we have also very active economic cooperation. Suffice it to say that we cooperate in the field of energy and hydropower generation. Tajikistan is one of the biggest clusters of this particular type of power generation. There are mountainous rivers, and you are well aware of all the projects that we are involved with. Some projects have already been implemented, some are quite promising to be implemented. There are some other areas as well, including the minerals, and it's very interesting for our economy, and the interest is mutual, both for the Russian economy and Tajik economy. And we have joint enterprises, we continue to make investments, Russian businesses make investment, and the competitive edge in Tajikistan, for example, is in cotton production, so for us it's important, it has significance. And of course, another important area of cooperation is the humanitarian cooperation. So the president of Tajikistan came up with this initiative to establish schools where they don't just study Russian language, but where the entire curriculum is in Russian, very close, very similar to our curriculum. We have a lot of our teachers working here, and obviously we will continue to enhance this activity to launch more branches of the Russian universities. And we will support younger people from Tajikistan to come and study at the Russian universities. One of the biggest, maybe even the biggest quota is for the Tajikistan's students. And everyone is well aware, but nevertheless, I will say it again, In Tajikistan, they attach a special significance to learning Russian language and Russian culture. I mean, theater and so on. But the most important thing is that the status of the Russian language is enshrined in its constitution, in law. And it is very important. It's a foundation for the further development of our interstate ties. As for the migration, of course, we understand what's happening in the Central Asian republics, what's happening with their demography. Just recently, just a few years ago, it was 5-something million people. Now it's more than 10 million people. So the demographic growth is really rapid here. And Russia is interested, of course, in workforce, but at the same time, we would like to see this workforce that we require. Secondly, people should have normal or good living conditions, and we need them to adhere to our laws, to our rules. They need to be law-abiding citizens, and it has to do with language learning as well. Nevertheless, there are a lot of issues, and citizens of the Russian Federation, so they also point out these issues. And first of all, we need to think about our citizens. And in this regard, it is very important to ensure that the officials from various agencies, including the Interior Ministry, worked in Tajikistan, same as their Tajik counterparts work in Russia. It is important. Why? Because they, as lawful representatives of the Tajik authorities, they will see with their own eyes what's happening in Russia. And secondly, they will be part of the decision-making process along with their Russian counterparts. And those Tajikistani nationals, they will regard it in a very different way. It's one thing if the police, our police wants them to follow or adhere to some laws, but it would be an absolutely different thing if the Tajikistani law enforcers will be part of this process, of this procedure. It will make the entire thing much more efficient. Mr. President, good afternoon. Российская Gazeta newspaper. 2 large-scale summits were held, a CIS summit and yesterday Russia Central Asia summit. So how successful were they? And Russia Central Asia's format, how necessary is it? So what does it do? You know, when the Soviet Union was dismantled and they announced the establishment of the CIS, I think the vast majority of our people didn't really understand what was going on. Okay, it was the USSR, now it's CIS. Everyone thought that nothing would change, but everything changed drastically. Unfortunately, the people in our country was not really informed about what happened then, but nevertheless, we inherited this reality now, and we have to live in this reality, and we need to think about how we can make this space better, how we can progress, and how we can maintain the competitive edge that we have after we established unified logistics, unified cooperation and industry across the entire Soviet space. And we have a similar cultural code despite the diversity of cultures and ethnicities across the former Soviet Union. And the CIS is trying to preserve all of that. At a certain point, it became clear that the level of cooperation, level of interaction within the CIS to resolve the complex economic issues was not enough. So at the initiative of Kazakhstan, at the initiative of President Nazarbayev back then, another organization was established, Eurasian Economic Union, where we planned a deeper cooperation between the countries who deemed it useful and necessary to establish such an organization, but the CIS is still as important, and its point is in maintaining this common space, including the humanitarian space. Because the peoples of the former Soviet Union, they did not have that many cultural differences, and there was a common ethical code, a common moral code of a Soviet citizen, and it's important. And maintaining, preserving everything that we inherited from the Soviet Union, that's what the CIS is doing. And I believe it's doing fine. It's successful. We maintain people-to-people contacts, quite close contacts. And we are striving to preserve this unified transport system, which is very important, and we support the Russian language as a language of international communication. It's an important part of our efforts and of preserving, maintaining the competitive edge that we have. And finally, the security matters that we need to ensure. Countering the most dangerous types of crime, for example, drug trafficking and so on. If you look at the documents that we adopted today, that we signed today, that's all there. And in the end, it means strengthening and maintaining our unity, and it is important for our future. As for the Central Asian countries, I believe it's more or less the same, but, well, a little bit more specific. I could agree with that. Because different ethnicities live here. And they use more and more their own cultural code, their own traditions, their own economic basis. The same is happening in Russia as well. And it is important here to stay in touch, not to drift apart too much, to maintain this feeling that there are a lot of things that unite us, and this is true. This is how it really is. So many countries have excessive workforce, but we have people from the former Soviet republics coming to us. Why is that? Because there is something that unites us, and they strive to learn the Russian language for the very same reason. And in this regard, we need to look for all the convergence points that are common for us and that we all cherish and that we all value. Our common history is another important thing. And today we spoke about it, and we will keep on saying this, that it was our common victory when we defeated Nazism. It was the victory that belongs to all our peoples. So there are things that unite us in the past, but we need to look for the things that will be uniting us in the future. And we need to pay special attention to this part of our foreign policy. That's why we established this particular format. Life Agency, yesterday you met Ilham Aliyev. So did you find any ways to resolve crisis in the bilateral relations, or there is still some reserve?
Well, I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't call it a crisis of interstate relations. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this growth in trade that we're having. Despite the situation that we're all facing, we're still seeing growth. So I wouldn't call this a crisis. I would say it's an emotional crisis. And that is quite understandable, because the event that happened was a tragic one. The crash of the passenger airplane and the passenger victims. Of course, we needed time to sort everything out, to carry out all the investigations and the expert assessments, to look into the flight recorders the so-called black boxes, to collate the information with what was reported by the Ministry of Defense, to check all the information that was coming from the flight control services, both in Russia and Kazakhstan. So all of that required a lot of work, a lot of very intensive, very professional work. When I studied law, I went to the Transport Prosecutor's Office for my work practice, and I know what kind of work that is. It's very meticulous, very painstaking work that may seem boring, but it's very demanding. You cannot make any mistakes. And we agreed with Mr. Aliyev that we'll do everything we can to ensure an objective investigation. The International Aviation Committee and the International Commercial Aviation Organization all looked into it. They were provided with the information, and maybe there are some details that the experts must review to finalize the assessment, and we discussed all of that with the President of Azerbaijan, and I hope that we'll be able to turn the page and continue developing our mutual contacts and go on with our plans. And we got many plans, both in the logistics sector and in industrial and humanitarian cooperation. In this regard, I can recall that Azerbaijan is also a largely Russian-speaking country. Russian language is very popular. It's studied in Azerbaijan, and is certainly an indicator that Azerbaijan's relations with Russia are fundamental and lasting. And I hope that this will be the case going forward. And emotions are, of course, understandable in cases like that. It's just important to make sure that the emotions do not hold us back and do not hold us back from moving forward. Yes, please. Going back to the summit, today it was decided to create the CIS Plus format. Is there an understanding which international partners will join this work, and what will this bring in terms of benefits for our countries? Well, thank you for your question. This was a very important step because it makes the Commonwealth something beyond this narrow family gathering, but makes it a true international organization. And there are countries that are interested in being involved in our joint projects and in looking for mutual interests and ways to address common problems. And there are many such countries. So we agreed to create this format, the CIS Plus format, and to accord the Shanghai Cooperation Organization an observer status. And I believe this was a very timely step that will expand the possibilities of the CIS and will increase the authority of the organization. And I'm sure that we will all feel that. Yes, please. Andrei Kolesnikov, Kommersant. Before your trip to Dushanbe, one of the deputy foreign ministers of Russia said that the potential that was gained during the Anchorage meeting has been spent by now. Do you agree with that assessment? And another piece of news that is coming in is that Donald Trump did not receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you think he ought to have received it? Do you think he had the right to that prize? Well, as to your first question, What do you want to hear from me? Well, what I would like to hear is that the potential is not spent. Well, you see, we did not reveal what exactly was discussed during the Anchorage meeting. We said that there is a general understanding from the United States and an understanding on the Russian side about where we can move and what can be done to resolve this conflict through peaceful means. And those are not simple issues. So we agreed with Donald that I will go back to Moscow and think about this issue and consult with my allies, and he said the same. This is a complicated set of questions that require a thorough review. But we're still grounded in that discussion that took place in Anchorage. We don't change anything here, and we still believe there is a work to be done on all of the sides, but we're still within the framework of the agreements reached in Alaska. And as to Trump and the Nobel Prize, it's not up to me to decide who should win the prize. And I don't think anyone present here will object, or anyone from your audience will object, when I say that there have been cases when the Nobel Prize Committee gave the Peace Prize to people who did nothing for peace. And in my opinion, those decisions damaged the prize's authority. So they gave the Peace Prize to people who did not do anything. You should only give the prize on the basis of actual merit. Otherwise, the significance of the prize is eroded, and that's what was happening. But ultimately, it's not up to me to judge. And I don't know whether the current US president is worthy of the prize, but he really is doing a lot to resolve the complicated issues of today that have persisted for years and for decades, the difficult crises that exist. And it is the case with the crisis in Ukraine. He's genuinely striving to find a resolution. Some things have been done, some things haven't, and maybe we will be able to achieve more based on the Anchorage talks. But he's certainly working on those issues, working on ways to achieve peace and resolve the difficult international situations that exist today. And the situation in the Middle East is one striking example. If the current initiative is brought to its completion, if everything that Donald was striving to do will be made real, it will be a truly historic achievement. And you may have noted that I talked with the Prime Minister of Iraq, who is now presiding at the League of Arab States, yesterday, and we agreed to move the meeting between Russia and the Arab League. And I did that because I don't want to interfere in the current process that I hope has now gained traction, a process that has been made possible with a very important role played by Donald Trump, and that is certainly an achievement. But once again, it's not for me to decide whether the prize should be given to him and whether it is the kind of achievement that should be rewarded with this particular prize. Yes, please. Russia Today. You said that you will continue working with Arab colleagues on Gaza. Which format would that be? And is Russia going to take part in the various working groups on monitoring, on humanitarian issues, on everything that has to do with the regulation and recognition of the Palestinian state. We have a very high level of trust with our Arab friends and with Palestine. And when I spoke at the Valdai Club meeting, I said that we support President Trump's initiatives in this regard, but one of the key issues here, one of the truly key issues is the creation of a Palestinian state. And it's certainly a forward-looking issue. I am not familiar with all the details of the current proposals, but I know that they speak of transferring power to the Palestinian administration, to the Palestinian Authority, the creation of a local militia to ensure security, and the level of trust that exists between Russia and our Arab friends, and our Palestinian friends first of all, is a means, I believe, that our participation could be meaningful. And if our friends believe that it is so, then we will be happy to take part. We have been involved for decades, and I think Russia has things to say and things to propose to help resolve those issues that will inevitably arise as the agreements are implemented. Russia channel. Well, first of all, happy birthday. Happy belated. And we have never seen how you spend your birthday, but this time we saw how you were with the military officers at a burial site of the Russian Tsars. Why there and why with those people? Well, the fate of the Russian people is now being decided right at the battlefield, and our military is at the forefront of this fight. They're literally fighting for our fate, and as you may have seen, I was with the commanders of those who, the commanders of all the forces that are currently engaged along the line of contact. I invited them to the Peter and Paul Cathedral, to the sanctuary that is the burial site of the Russian Tsars, including Peter the Great, and we laid a wreath on his burial site, first of all, because he laid the foundation of the Russian state as it exists today. However it was called, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, but the very basic tenets of the state were set forth by Peter the Great. And the soldiers and officers are essentially now guarding the state that was established by Peter the Great. Russia became bigger and smaller under Catherine II. There were the greatest territorial expansions, and she's buried right next to Peter the Great. So it was a recognition of the people who made the most fundamental contribution to the development of our statehood. And of course I had a briefing with the military officers. They told me about the situation in their areas of responsibility, and then we continued our consultations in an informal setting. Well, a birthday usually requires presents. Did they give you any presents? Well, yes, there were some military figurines and some books I would say that two of the gifts were of special significance. One of the commanders gave me two icons that had been carried by our soldiers, icons that had saved their lives. Those are icons with dents from bullets, and they sent those icons to me as a gift. And I want to use this opportunity to convey my most sincere words of gratitude to those soldiers, and I wish that God keeps them safe as He has until now. What tomahawks? Yes, please.
Zvezda TV channel in Kiev, Zelensky threatening to hit Russia with, strike Russia with tomahawks, maybe even the Kremlin. And they say that it's a kind of a blackmail. Yes, so it's not just a blackmail, it's trying to intimidate everyone with these words. But the Americans are saying that the supply of tomahawks will depend on the position of Russia in negotiations, and if they are not happy with our position, then they will supply them with tomahawks. Do we have a response to it? Our response is strengthening the air defense system of the Russian Federation. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to ask you a question. You have already proposed to extend the START treaty that is going to expire very soon in February 2026, and judging from the first reaction that we heard from Washington, President Trump seems to have a positive attitude. So maybe you received some signals that Washington is ready to be involved in some consultations, and are 4 months enough to hold such negotiations, and will it take a new summit between you and your American counterpart? Well, we maintain contacts between the Foreign Ministry and Department of State. Will these 4 months be enough to make a decision on extending the treaty? I think 4 months are enough if there is goodwill to extend the treaty. But if Americans deem it unnecessary, it's not a critical thing for us, because in this regard, we just continue to work according to plan. I have already said that, and it's not a secret for anyone. The novelty, the state-of-the-art nature of our deterrence means is better than any other state might boast, and we keep on developing this. As I said it before, we continue this work, and I believe that in the nearest future we will have a chance to announce a new weapon. We spoke about it before, but now the tests are ongoing, which are successful. As for the intercontinental component, in the air, on the sea, on the ground, everything is at a very high level, and we maintain it at this level. But we are open for negotiations. If it's acceptable and useful for the American, it's good. If not, that's fine too, which will be a pity, because there will be no deterrence tools in the field of the strategic offensive weapons. Is this it? Okay. One more question. Anna Sidich, Interfax Agency. A follow-up question about the Nobel Prize. Zelensky said that he would support Trump's application if Trump supplies tomahawks. So how do you assess this kind of approach? Well, I think the opinion of the current head of the Kiev regime was not something that the Nobel Committee was interested in when they were making a decision, but making this connection between the Nobel Peace Prize and weapon supplies, it's ridiculous. And it just demonstrates the level of the current Kiev regime overall. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, well, fine. What else? West FM, Radio Mayak the Valdai Discussion Club, you said that one of the countries is preparing for the nuclear tests. Is this country the US? And you said that that Russia would follow the suit and will also have nuclear tests. Won't it bring us back to the previous century when the world put a ban on nuclear tests, and could it provoke a new nuclear arms race? Well, to be fair, the race is still ongoing. Will it bring us back to some previous times? Well, I did not say that the United States were preparing for the tests. I said some countries were preparing, and specialists, they understand everything perfectly because everyone is eager to test the efficiency of the fuel that for years were in the missiles. So you can emulate this on computers, and some specialists think that that's enough, but other specialists believe that some actual tests need to be carried out. And some countries, they float these ideas. From what we know, they even prepare for this. And that's why I said that if they have the tests, we will do the same. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? From the point of view of ensuring security, it is a good thing. From the point of view of overall picture, bigger picture, related to the deterrence, with actions aimed at, well, if not at reduction, but at least at deterring the arms race. And maybe bad, but in this context, so the START treaty must be extended, so it's something to think about. Thank you. Goodbye.